catching jets, boo. I got jet flu. When I touch down, I'ma get loose.
This story is about a tangled web of love, lies, and betrayal that ultimately led to the tragic demise of a beautiful soul, April Holt. She was a mother, a loving wife, and a devoted family woman who endured a rocky marriage, clinging to the hope that things would get better. But her husband, a man consumed by his own ego and desire for control, was a force to be reckoned with. He was brutal, domineering, and always wanted to have the final say, no matter who he hurt in the process. The flames of passion that once burned bright in their relationship had long since flickered out, leaving only a trail of ashes and heartache in its wake. Despite the challenges spouses face, there are many ways to resolve marital issues without resorting to violence, one of which is dialogue. Have you tried that and it didn't work? Well, nonetheless, he chose a different path, one that would change the course of their lives forever. He put on a show of grief, mourning like a concerned widower. But as the saying goes, whenever a crime is committed, no matter how little, there must be trails left behind by the offender. The question is, what drove him to such a heinous act? What demons possessed him to take the life of the woman he once claimed to love? Was it a twisted desire for power, a need to assert his dominance, or something more sinister? A warm welcome to Shocking Facts, True Crime. Here we unravel details behind every true crime stories. We value your support. Kindly support us by subscribing to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next shocking true crime story. Why would a father take the life of his wife after she returned to him, leaving their young son to grow up without the love and care of his mother? How would someone who represented positivity and canvassed for mental health awareness commit suicide? Why would he take away a sister, daughter, and friend from her family and loved ones, leaving a gaping hole that can never be filled? The pain and suffering he caused will be etched in their memories forever, a constant reminder of the brutality and heartlessness of his actions. If you're looking for the answers, stay tuned and let your popcorn be beside you, because it's a hell of a ride I'm about to take you on. The mysteries and unanswered questions surrounding April Holt's demise, the reason behind her lover's actions, and the efforts her mother made to bring her daughter's killer to justice will be revealed. Our thoughts and prayers go out to her family, loved ones, and friends, who will never forget the vibrant spirit that was taken from them far too soon. April Lynn Holt's life radiated light, a soft yet unyielding glow that warmed everyone she met. She was the kind of woman who turned ordinary moments into meaningful connections. Living in a quiet corner of Nashville, Tennessee, she had built a life she was proud of. Her days were spent doting on her two children, nurturing dreams of a brighter future, and pouring her energy into creating uplifting content for her 200,000 TikTok followers. On her account, April was a beacon of positivity, sharing videos about faith, personal growth, and family. Her audience knew her as a woman who believed in the power of manifestation and self-improvement. A person who, despite life's challenges, refused to let her spirit waver. But behind the smiles and the hopeful affirmations was a woman wrestling with the fractures in her marriage to Donovan Holt. He wasn't always the shadow that loomed over her life. There had been love once, but that love had eroded into arguments, manipulation, and fear. They had separated before, but April had given him another chance. By July 2023, the weight of April Lynn Holt's decision pressed heavily on her, but the clarity it brought was undeniable. She couldn't stay. Her marriage to Donovan had long since ceased to be a sanctuary. What had once been a bond of love had turned into a suffocating cage, where arguments had replaced laughter and tension filled the air like a storm waiting to break. When she asked him for a divorce, it wasn't just a step toward reclaiming her happiness. It was a desperate bid for survival. April Lynn Holt sat alone in her car, her hands tightly gripping the steering wheel as she stared out at the rain-soaked street in front of her. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, threatening to spill over at any moment. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions raging inside her. Her marriage to Donovan had become a nightmare, a never-ending cycle of arguments and resentment. As she pulled into the driveway of their small suburban home, April felt a sense of dread settle in the pit of her stomach. She knew what awaited her inside: more tension, more silence, more loneliness. But tonight was different. Tonight she had made a decision. She couldn't continue living in this suffocating cage of a marriage. She deserved better. Her children deserved better. With a shaky hand, she reached for the car door handle and stepped out into the pouring rain. The front door creaked open as April entered the house, the sound echoing in the stillness of the night. Donovan's voice called out from the living room, his tone sharp and accusatory. She braced herself for another argument, another round of blame and anger. But this time she was prepared. This time she wouldn't back down. The tension in the air was palpable as April stood before Donovan, her words steady and resolute. "I want a divorce," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but filled with a strength she didn't know she possessed. Donovan's face contorted in rage, his fists clenched at his sides. The storm had finally broken, and the truth lay bare between them. April had gone to bed early, seeking solace in sleep from the turmoil of her life. Donovan stayed up late, drowning his sorrows in alcohol and bitterness. But as the clock struck midnight, he made a decision of his own, a decision that would shatter their lives forever. However, he couldn't bring himself to carry it out, even with the Dutch courage of alcohol. He thought about using a pillow to cover her face until she died, but he had a change of heart and went to sleep instead. Days turned into weeks, and April's decision to leave him hung heavy over their home like a dark cloud. The atmosphere was thick with unease, with each passing moment driving them further apart. Donovan didn't know how to handle the situation, and the more time passed, the more he felt like he was losing his grip on her. And then, one fateful morning, he thought about it again, and it made sense to him. He decided to go through with it, despite knowing it was a terrible idea. This was 2 weeks after April had told Donovan that she wanted a divorce, and he had said nothing about it. The searing heat of a Nashville summer hung in the air like an unwelcome guest. Inside the quiet confines of the family's modest home, the sounds of an ordinary morning, children's voices, distant traffic, masked the unfolding of a tragedy. April had woken up, ready to face the day with a positive mindset. She got prepared and entered the bathtub to take her bath. Donovan, who had been quiet in the room, suddenly snapped. He didn't need any alcohol or wine to make up his mind. He was done, and he wanted her to be done as well. The sound of the bathroom door creaking open startled April, making her reach for more water. She was rinsing the soap lather from her eyes when her heart began pounding in her chest. She wanted to call out Donovan's name, but she hesitated, wanting to leave the bathroom first. "Donovan?" she called out in a shrill voice, a note of fear creeping into her voice. But there was no answer. Slowly she sat up, her eyes scanning the room. And then she saw it, the figure standing in the doorway, looking strange and out of place. It was as if he had appeared from nowhere, and something about him looked off. He never watched her take her bath, and his face had a sinister look. He was holding a plastic bag, and April had a premonition that something wasn't right. She could tell that he knew, and that both of them were waiting for the right time to act. Before she could react, Donovan lunged at her, his hands wrapping around her throat with a strength born of desperation. April gasped for air, her hands clawing at his arms, trying to break free from his hold. But it was no use. The room spun around her, the world fading to black as Donovan's grip tightened, his eyes wild with a madness she had never seen before. The last thing April saw was the plastic bag being pulled over her head, the suffocating darkness closing in around her. And then there was nothing but silence. He came out and acted like nothing had happened. He took his apron, got into the kitchen, and prepared breakfast. Probably a sandwich, because it looks like a murderer's favorite morning meal. April's 7-year-old son, blissfully unaware of the shadows creeping through their home, wandered down the hallway toward the bathroom. He was even instructed by his dad to check on April, his mother, while he was served breakfast. When he opened the door, the sight before him would etch itself into his memory forever. His mother lay lifeless on the bathroom floor, her body still, her face obscured by a plastic bag duct-taped tightly around her head. The innocence of his young heart collided with the terror of what he saw. His voice, high-pitched with panic, rang through the house as he screamed for help. Paramedics arrived swiftly, their calm professionalism masking the grim reality they faced. They worked tirelessly to save her, their hands moving with practiced urgency as they tried to pull her back from the brink. But even as they carried her to the ambulance, their faces betrayed what their words didn't. April was slipping away. 3 days later, on July 31st, 2023, the machines keeping her alive were silenced, and the vibrant 29-year-old mother, TikTok creator, and light of her family was gone. At the hospital, Jamie Dickerson stood at her daughter's bedside, her heart breaking into pieces. April's face was still, but it bore a silent testimony to the violence she had endured. Bruises marked her neck and ankles like dark warnings, and the broken blood vessels on her cheeks painted a chilling picture of her final moments. Jamie's heart twisted with grief and rage. This wasn't a suicide, it couldn't be. The police arrived at the scene the following morning after her death, their faces grim as they surveyed the bathroom where April's lifeless body lay. Donovan sat in the corner, his eyes vacant, a shell of the man he once was. They suspected no foul play, and it was clear. April Lynn Holt had taken her own life. The initial explanation was almost too neat, too convenient. The Metro Nashville Police Department ruled April's death a suicide. The autopsy report pointed to suffocation as the cause, and with that, the case was closed. But Jamie Dickerson, April's mother, felt an icy certainty in her gut. Her mother thought otherwise. How would her daughter do such a thing? Why would she clamor for mental healing and turn around and do the opposite? Her daughter was full of love and didn't deserve to go this way. Her image was smeared, and she knew it. Her daughter hadn't taken her own life. Something darker, more sinister had happened in that house. As the hours passed, her suspicions turned to certainty. Jamie's grief sharpened into resolve as she began to piece together the fragments of what had happened. The clues were there, lurking in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to see them. Her grandson, shaken but honest, spoke of the fight he had overheard between his parents that day. The echoes of raised voices and angry words lingered in his memory. Then there was Donovan. His behavior in the wake of April's death was jarringly strange, almost mechanical. He handed over April's phone to Jamie without hesitation, a move that felt less like generosity and more like an attempt to rid himself of something incriminating. He let her make every medical decision, an act of detachment that made Jamie's skin crawl. And then there was his pacing, his rocking, the way he clutched his head like a man haunted, not by loss, but by guilt. And there was the ring, April's wedding ring, the symbol of a union that had turned sour, was no longer on her finger. Jamie discovered that Donovan had pawned it just days before her death, a cruel and calculated act that felt like a prelude to what was to come. Each detail, each memory, and each inconsistency felt like a thread in a tangled web of lies. Jamie couldn't shake the feeling that the official ruling of suicide was wrong, that it was a convenient narrative shielding a far darker truth. Jamie's suspicions were immediate. When she saw April in the hospital, her heart twisted. Bruises marred her daughter's neck and ankles, and broken blood vessels stained her cheeks, a tapestry of violence that couldn't be ignored. As Jamie grieved, she also began to dig. The pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. Her grandson, who had been home during the incident, spoke of a heated argument between his parents that day. Donovan's actions before and after April's death became increasingly suspicious. He had pawned April's wedding ring just days before she died, a cruel irony that felt like a prelude to the nightmare. Jamie refused to let these details be ignored, but her determination met resistance at every turn. The police saw no reason to reopen the case, even as Jamie combed through autopsy reports and police documents, pointing out inconsistencies, like the bruises and a mysterious gash on April's thigh. Authorities remained unmoved. To them, it was an open-and-shut case. To Jamie, it was a travesty. Her fight for answers led her to the Community Review Board, a local watchdog group that agreed to examine the evidence. What they found was damning. 2 clear fingerprints on the duct tape used to seal the bag around April's head belonged to Donovan. It was the breakthrough Jamie had been waiting for. She confronted Donovan with the evidence, telling him the truth would come out one way or another. What came next was a moment she would never forget. Over a tense FaceTime call, Donovan cracked. In a voice devoid of remorse, he described what he had done. He admitted to strangling April during an argument, dragging her to the bathroom, and staging the scene to look like a suicide. As Jamie recorded his confession, her heart broke all over again. The man who had once vowed to love and protect her daughter had stolen her life. Armed with the recording, Jamie returned to the Metro Nashville Police Department. This time, they listened. In July 2024, Donovan confessed again, this time to cold case detectives. He was arrested in San Antonio, Texas, 2 months later, charged with reckless homicide, evidence tampering, and false reporting. For Jamie, it was a bittersweet victory. She had fought tooth and nail to expose the truth, but the charges felt inadequate. This wasn't reckless, this was murder. April's revised autopsy report told the real story. Her death was no suicide. It was homicide. Strangulation, not suffocation, had stolen her breath. And yet, Jamie's battle wasn't over. She continued to push for first-degree murder charges, unwilling to settle for anything less than full accountability. Through it all, April's memory remained a guiding light. She had been a devoted mother, a dreamer with plans for the future, and a source of joy to so many. Jamie vowed to honor her daughter's legacy. She started a grief center in Nashville, a sanctuary for those navigating loss. With grief classes, youth support groups, and art therapy, the center would be a place where pain could transform into healing, a reflection of the love April had poured into the world. As Donovan sits in a Nashville jail awaiting trial, Jamie's fight continues. But she's not just fighting for justice anymore. She's fighting to keep April's spirit alive, to ensure that her light shines on, even in the darkest of times. And for those who knew April, or came to know her through her story, they carry the haunting truth of her final days. A life so vibrant, so full of promise, was stolen in an act of cruelty. But her mother's relentless pursuit of the truth turned tragedy into a rallying cry. No matter how long it takes, justice will prevail. Domestic violence is a serious issue that affects millions of people worldwide. It's a pattern of behavior used by one person to control and intimidate another, often through physical, emotional, or psychological abuse. No one deserves to be hurt, threatened, or belittled by someone they love. Domestic violence can take many forms, including physical violence, emotional manipulation, financial control, and isolation. Domestic violence can lead to serious physical harm, emotional trauma, and even death. It can also affect children, friends, and family members who witness or experience the abuse. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, there are resources available to help. Let's work together to create a world where domestic violence is never tolerated or accepted. Let's support survivors, hold abusers accountable, and teach our children that love and respect are the foundation of healthy relationships. If this chilling story sent shivers down your spine, make sure to share the video, subscribe to the channel for more true crime stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to ensure you never miss a new video.